What if I told you that some of the most innovative turbocharged cars in history were complete market failures? Today, we're uncovering 4 turbocharged beasts that pushed the boundaries of automotive engineering, but vanished into obscurity. From GM's embarrassing first attempt to Shelby's hidden variable nozzle masterpiece, these forgotten legends changed everything while selling almost nothing. In April 1962, Oldsmobile rolled out something American buyers had never seen in a dealership. The F-85 Jetfire arrived as a 2-door compact with a turbocharger bolted to its engine. This was not a concept car or a race special. You could walk into an Oldsmobile dealer and buy one off the lot. Under the hood sat an all-aluminum 215 cubic-inch V8, breathing through a Garrett turbocharger. The numbers told an incredible story. This tiny engine made 215 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. That worked out to exactly 1 horsepower per cubic inch of displacement, a ratio that seemed almost magical in 1962. Engineers obsessed over that 1-to-1 figure. It meant Oldsmobile had figured out how to extract massive power from a compact package. For context, most V8s of similar size were making maybe 150 to 170 horsepower. The Jetfire's little aluminum block was punching way above its weight. But the engineering got even stranger. Oldsmobile knew that turbocharging created heat and detonation problems. Their solution was a water methanol injection system they marketed as turbo rocket fluid. This special mixture cooled the incoming air charge and prevented engine knock. The system had its own reservoir that drivers had to keep filled. If the fluid level dropped too low, a safety valve would automatically cut boost pressure to protect the engine from destroying itself. The Jetfire looked similar to a regular cutlass from the outside. Aluminum side panels and Jetfire badges set it apart, but most people would not notice unless they looked carefully. Inside, the dashboard featured a special gauge showing power versus economy settings and a warning light for low turbo rocket fluid. With the automatic transmission, the Jetfire could hit 60 miles per hour or 96 kilometers per hour in about 9.2 seconds. That was genuinely quick for a small American car in 1962. The Jetfire shared its turbo distinction with only one other American car that year. Chevrolet had just launched the Corvair Spider with its own turbocharged engine. These 2 models represented the entire turbocharged production car market in the United States. Despite the advanced technology, the Jetfire became a maintenance nightmare. Owners forgot to fill the turbo rocket fluid tank or simply ignored the warning lights. When the tank ran dry, the engine suddenly lost all its extra power. Some owners complained about complexity. Others just wanted their car to work without fussing over special fluids. Oldsmobile engineers later admitted they had over-engineered the system. One called it a monstrosity of extra parts, belts, pumps, and control mechanisms. The whole setup was too complicated for average drivers who just wanted reliable transportation. Sales reflected these problems. Oldsmobile moved 3,765 Jetfires in 1962 and 5,842 in 1963. Only 9,607 total cars were built before Oldsmobile pulled the plug after the 1963 model year. By 1965, General Motors was so embarrassed they offered to convert old Jetfires to simpler carbureted engines at no cost to owners. The 215 cubic-inch aluminum V8 itself had a longer life. Oldsmobile eventually sold the design to British Rover, who used variations of it for decades. But the Jetfire and its troublesome turbo system disappeared from history. No American automaker would attempt turbocharging again until Buick brought it back 15 years later. Today, surviving Jetfires are rare curiosities. Most were either converted to naturally aspirated engines or scrapped long ago. The car that should have started a turbo revolution instead became a cautionary tale about complexity versus practicality. After the Jetfire disaster, American automakers avoided turbochargers like a bad investment. But in 1978, Buick decided to try again. They introduced the Regal Sport Coupe Turbo, bringing forced induction back to United States showrooms after a 15-year absence. This was not a small experimental program. Buick had been testing turbocharged V6 engines in a 1976 Indianapolis 500 pace car. Those tests convinced them the technology had matured enough for production. By mid-1977, they were ready to launch the Turbo Regal for the 1978 model year. The engine was a 231 cubic inch or 3.8-liter Buick V6 paired with a Garrett turbocharger. Buick offered two versions to buyers. The base setup used a two-barrel carburetor and made 150 horsepower at 3,800 revolutions per minute. Step up to the optional four-barrel quadrajet carburetor, and you got 175 horsepower at 4,000 revolutions per minute. Both used a cast iron block with strengthened pistons and a modified camshaft to handle boost pressure. The real innovation was something Buick called the Turbo Control Center. This was essentially an early knock sensor, years before other manufacturers adopted the technology. An accelerometer mounted in the intake manifold listened for engine ping. When it detected detonation, the system automatically retarded spark timing to prevent damage. This let Buick run higher boost pressures safely on pump gasoline. All 1978 Turbo Buicks ran on unleaded fuel through catalytic converters. California models even got an air pump to meet that state's stricter emissions standards. Buick was proving you could have performance and clean exhaust. The turbo option was available only on specific models. You could get it in the Regal Sport Coupe or the similar Lesabur Sport Coupe. It was not offered on the Fastback Century that year. This limited availability kept production numbers relatively low. The 175 horsepower model delivered strong mid-range torque that made the car feel quick in real-world driving. Performance numbers were solid for the late 1970s. 0 to 60 miles per hour or 96 kilometers per hour took around 9 to 10 seconds. Top speed was theoretically around 110 to 120 miles per hour, or 177 to 193 kilometers per hour. These were not supercar figures, but they were respectable. Handling stayed true to Buick's comfort-first philosophy. This was not a sports car. The suspension was soft, and the steering light. But the turbo engine made the Regal feel noticeably quicker in traffic than a standard V6 model. You got V8 acceleration without the fuel consumption penalty. Buick dressed up the Turbo Regals nicely. Many came with metallic paint, optional, T-tops, and upscale interior trim. These were handsome, well-finished cars that looked expensive. But despite the solid engineering and decent performance, the Turbo Regal never caught fire with buyers. Buick kept it in the lineup for just 3 model years, 1978, 1979, and 1980. Sales were modest. Most Regal buyers stuck with the cheaper, naturally aspirated V6 or optional V8 engines. The Turbo Regal quietly disappeared after 1980. Most people forgot it ever existed. Later in the 1980s, Buick would return to turbo V6 power with the famous Grand National and GNX models. Those cars became legends. But the 1978-80 Regal Turbo that started it all remained a footnote. Today, these early Turbo Regals are extremely rare. They were overshadowed by their more famous descendants and never got the recognition they deserved. Yet they proved turbocharging could work in mainstream American cars and set the stage for Buick's later performance machines. Renault launched the Fuego in 1980 as a stylish two-door coupe aimed at buyers who wanted something sportier than a sedan, but more practical than a sports car. It had sleek wedge-shaped styling and seating for 4. For 3 years, it sold with various naturally aspirated engines. Then, in 1983, Renault added the model everyone would remember, the Fuego Turbo. The engine was a 1.6-liter, or 1,565 cubic centimeter inline 4-cylinder from Renault's F-Series. Adding a Garrett turbocharger boosted output to 132 horsepower. That might not sound impressive today, but remember the standard Fuego made just 70 to 95 horsepower. The turbo nearly doubled the power. Top speed reached about 200 kilometers per hour, or roughly 125 miles per hour. Renault knew a turbo engine needed better brakes. The Fuego Turbo got 4-wheel disc brakes for the first time in the model's history. Standard Fuegos made do with front discs and rear drums, but the Turbo needed stronger stopping power. Beyond the mechanical upgrades, Renault packed the Turbo with luxury features unusual for what was essentially a modified economy car. Buyers got alloy wheels, air conditioning, central locking, power windows, and leather or velour seats with special Turbo logos embroidered into them. The body wore Turbo decals along the sides, so everyone knew this was the hot model. Renault even added technology that was rare in 1983. The Fuego Turbo came with a built-in onboard computer that displayed fuel consumption and range data. After a mid-1984 refresh, some models got remote keyless locking. These features were exotic in European cars of that era. Renault built 226,583 Fuego coupes in France by 1985, with total worldwide production reaching around 265,000 units when you counted builds in Argentina and Spain. But the Turbo was just one trim level in the Fuego lineup. Only a small fraction of those 250,000 cars were actual turbos, making this version fairly rare. In the United States, the Fuego faced an uphill battle. Renault sold it through AMC dealers from 1982 to 1985, including some turbo models. American buyers were skeptical of French cars, and the Fuego never gained traction. Sales were poor. Performance testing showed the Turbo was genuinely quick. 0 to 60 miles per hour, or 96 kilometers per hour, took about 8 to 9 seconds. Reviews praised the car as sophisticated and refined rather than raw or brutal. This was not a muscle car. It was a European sport coupe that emphasized smoothness over aggression. The Turbo gave the Fuego a fiery personality that matched its name, which means fire in Spanish. Renault marketed it heavily in Europe. They even produced a turbocharged diesel version and claimed it was the fastest diesel car of 1983. The gasoline Turbo was quicker still, but by 1985, the entire Fuego line was struggling. Renault's newer models were taking sales, and the coupe market was shrinking. The company discontinued the Fuego after 1985. The Turbo version died with it. In France and other European markets, enthusiasts remember the Fuego Turbo fondly as a quirky but capable sport coupe. In America, it became a trivia question. Most people could not name a single Renault model from the 1980s if you asked them today. Surviving Fuego Turbos are rare, especially in the United States. Rust and lack of parts support killed most of them years ago. The few that remain are collector oddities, reminders of a time when Renault tried to sell sporty French coupes to Americans who mostly ignored them. Carroll Shelby built his reputation transforming Mustangs into fire-breathing performance machines. By the late 1980s, he was working with Chrysler instead of Ford. The partnership produced some unusual cars, including the Shelby CSX and its successor, the CSX VNT. These were based on the humble Dodge Shadow and Plymouth Sundance economy cars, but Shelby gave them serious performance upgrades. The first CSX appeared in 1987. Shelby started with the Peabody platform that underpinned Chrysler's cheapest compact cars. Under the hood went a 2.2-liter turbocharged inline four-cylinder engine, specifically the Chrysler Turbo 2 with an intercooler. Output was 175 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. That was strong for a small front-wheel drive car. Shelby did not stop with the engine. He upgraded the suspension with better springs and shocks. He borrowed rear disc brakes from the Shelby Daytona project, giving the CSX superior stopping power. Only 750 of these 1987 models were built. All were painted black with modest Shelby badges. They were subtle and understated. In 1988, Shelby built a variant called the CSXT for a rental car company. These used a non-intercooled turbo engine and wore white paint with special striping. Since they were not sold to the public, they remain a footnote in Shelby history. The real innovation came in 1989 with the CSX VNT. Shelby fitted these cars with a Garrett variable nozzle turbo, making this the first production car in the world to use variable geometry turbocharger technology. The VNT system could change the angle of its internal vanes to optimize boost across the engine's rev range. This meant almost no turbo lag. Boost came on instantly from low engine speeds. Power remained at 175 horsepower, but torque jumped to 205 pound-feet at just 2,100 revolutions per minute. The engine delivered full power almost immediately, with virtually no lag. For drivers used to waiting for turbos to spool up, this was a revelation. Shelby also fitted special lightweight composite wheels called fiber rides. The 1989 CSX VNT models were painted in bright exotic red to distinguish them from the black 1987 cars. Only 500 were built, including 2 prototypes. All Shelby CSX models came with a 5-speed manual transmission. These were drivers' cars. The combination of front-wheel drive, strong torque, and minimal turbo lag made them quick off the line. Owners loved the acceleration from low speeds. The variable nozzle turbo really did eliminate the laggy, jerky power delivery that plagued other turbocharged cars of the era. But the CSX remained obscure, even when new. Shelby sold them only through select Dodge dealers. Most went to enthusiasts who specifically sought them out. Average car. Buyers had no idea these things existed. After 1989, the Shelby and Chrysler partnership ended. The CSX VNT became the last turbocharged Dodge that Carroll Shelby would create. It marked the end of an interesting chapter where the Mustang legend applied his tuning philosophy to front-wheel drive economy car platforms. Today, finding a Shelby CSX or CSX VNT is extremely difficult. Between the 1987 and 1989 models, only about 1,250 were built total. Many were driven hard and not maintained well. Others were wrecked or scrapped. The survivors are collector items, but they never achieved the fame of Shelby's Mustangs. These cars represent a fascinating what-if scenario. Shelby proved that variable geometry turbochargers could work in production cars years before other manufacturers adopted the technology. But without a bigger marketing push or higher production numbers, the CSX remained a secret known only to Mopar enthusiasts and Shelby completists.